Should you be friends with your ex? I thought I was stupid my whole life.
If you can't be a fool, you can't be the master. They're trying to skim out the best people who are good for these big corporations. It's good for universities, it's good for the government.
Who should say I love you first? Should bills be split 50-50 in a relationship?
We'll find out what your gift is and we'll make sure we'll polish that.
Who handles breakups better, men or women? I find it very hard to stop it. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Autonomous Podcast with me, your host, Tharani and Marlon. So today we're going to talk about intelligence, and we're going to actually do a little fun game, a rapid fire questionnaire, we're just hoping that you guys can interact and get involved. So shall we just get started?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so I came across this story online, and it reminds me of how people in school really don't think that they're smart enough. And there's a lot of people out there in the world right now who probably go to school and think they're not smart enough, right? And, you know, I was really one of them, and I just want to read the story out to you. So here we go. I thought I was stupid my whole life. Turns out I just wasn't that kind of smart. I spent most of my life thinking I was dumb. I struggled to read, mixed up my letters, and writing made me feel defeated. Later, I was diagnosed with dyslexia, but by then, I already believed I wasn't smart. What school never recognized was my strengths. I built a bike at 9 and a computer at 14, so I was really good at building. Now I run a successful tech company. I still can't spell to save life, but I hire people to do that for me. And I know I wasn't stupid. I just wasn't that kind of smart school rewarded. Yeah. That story really hit me because I feel like that's quite personal to me. I feel like, school only rewards a certain type of intelligence. And if you don't perform well in those types of intelligence, you are classed as, well, not that smart, right? You know, you hear that saying, oh, they're not book smart, but they're street smart. Well, actually, there's a person called Howard Gardner, and his theory is that there's multiple types of intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought that's quite interesting because that made me believe in myself more. That made me see that actually, writing, reading, mathematics isn't just the only way of intelligence. There's other ways of intelligence. There's problem solving. Yeah. There's different types. Would you like to go through some of the types?
Yes. So basically, according to Howard Gardner's multiple types of intelligence, there are multiple variants of, it's a big spectrum where some individuals are visual smart, picture smart. They can remember pictures and we can process pictures far better than other people.
Yeah, I think
more visual learners.
There's 9 types of intelligence according to Howard Gardner.
Yeah.
So visual, then we've got
linguistic, and people who are quite good with languages, and they end up being good communicators, maybe going to law and areas where communication is the predominant subject, and those people can become expert in that field as well.
See, I think verbal intelligence is such a underrated intelligence, because if you can't verbalize your intelligence, if you can't verbalize or articulate, then you really can't survive in life. Because look at the people who are actually street smart. They have communication skills that not many people can have. They can be spatially aware and understand people and gauge people and communicate, and that's how those types of people gets far in life. And a lot of people diminish that type of intelligence, but actually we need to, as a society, think that that type of intelligence is kind of the key to success in living in a society.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. So like you said as well, there are people who are verbal, which is, who are good with communication, and they tend to go into areas such as law, or there are people who are good with logical reasoning. They are number smart, and not necessarily, for example, so there's a lot of people, unfortunately, even the education system, focuses on people being more. So, for example, if you're technically 10 out of 10, you can build a car from scratch or build a software from scratch. You are technically 10 out of 10. However, if you can't communicate your thoughts very well, but your communication is 3 out of 10, the society will deem you as 3 out of 10, not 10 out of 10, right? So if you look at engineering field, people in those kind of particular industries, you can see these individuals are very, very smart. They're very logical, they're very analytical. However, they do find issues with being able to communicate their thoughts and express their ways. So some people might become more comfortable in writing and expressing in that way. So there are visual learners and smart and linguistic, again the verbal, and then you have logical, which is again reasoning and numbering, and kinesthetic, who are body smart. These things that we don't really talk about it. These people,
and they're like athletes,
personal trainers,
champions,
bodybuilders,
so they are kinesthetic intelligence, and that's so interesting to see it like that, right? So interesting, because we instantly think the mind as we think intelligence, right? Personally, I don't think body smart, and that's true. I mean, I can't dance to save my life, I've got 2 left feet, but someone can naturally, they're just born with it, they're just gifted with this type of intelligence, and it's been passed down from generations to generations, and that's so cool. So yeah, that's a type of intelligence. Then there's a natural smart, a nature smart intelligence. I'm not sure what that actually is.
I'm not maybe environmentalists and people who are predominantly saving the planet, global activists, maybe hikers and swimmers, and these people probably fall under that category as well. Even though they are classed as athletes, they are also in the category of loving nature, being with nature, connecting in that regard.
Oh, so I just researched it, recognizing patterns in nature and the environment. So biologists, conservationists, gardeners, they would be naturally good at those types of things.
Right.
So we've got here visual, linguistic, logical, kinesthetic, naturalist, musician.
Yeah.
Now, musician is obviously, I think that's quite world-renowned, being musically talented, intellectual, that's more regarded as an intellect as well, isn't it?
Yeah. In a way, I think I play a couple of instruments. So I remember growing up, I picked up a guitar and I wanted to exactly figure out how to play this instrument. And I am analytically good person. The way that I find my brain works the best is that I can understand pattern. I can see that, I can mimic it. And so I understood that musical instrument, any note has like a pattern. So if you follow the pattern, you'll be able to play the guitar, that instrument later on. So I started playing the guitar. And what I did was, in the beginning, it was very, very difficult. You have to understand the rhythm, then you have to move your fingers accordingly. You had to get into that rhythm, and then you develop your your listening ability in order to, if you're listening to a song and playing accordingly. So there are a lot of things, right? So I feel like musicians, it's their ability to understand these patterns are classed as, because
patterns. Problem solving and
problem
patterns.
Solving.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they're persistent in pursuing that. For example, if you think about it logically, people who play an instrument go far in life. The reason why I say that is when you start playing an instrument, any instrument, piano, guitar, you fail the first day. Second day you fail. Third day you fail. You fail the first week, first month. You're going to go on to fail many months, years maybe. And one day you don't fail at all. You play that symphony, that entire song without a miss, without a single note wrong. So that persistent, that makes them unique as well. So it correlates to life itself directly. So if you think about life itself, you will have more failures in life than wins. That's generally the law of nature, is how it is. Anybody.
I guess if you perceive it that way.
No, what I mean is like, you're not always going to win. There are a lot ups and downs in life,
there's
right?
ups and downs. I mean, it's like looking at the glass full and the glass empty, right? Like, you can look at it both ways. But I see your point.
No. What I'm getting at is, for example, you can't pick up a guitar and then be a master of that guitar within a day or two.
Yeah.
You have to fail for a long period of time.
Perfect, yeah.
So there's a saying that if you can't be a fool, you can't be the master. Because in order to become the master, you have to be the student first. So when you're a student, you're going to make errors. You're going to make mistakes. Those errors are going to make you look like a fool.
Yeah.
But if you consistently practice in order to develop that skill, one day you can become that master. So if you can't be the fool, you can't be the master. And so, that's what correlates to life itself. Anything that you pick up, you can't be an expert overnight. You're going to fail every day for the first few days, maybe months, maybe weeks, depending on how deep that you have to learn into this skill in order to perfect it. And then one day you're going to perfect it, right? So that's life itself. So I think persistent in these musical people as well is what, that resilience is also, I think it's a form of intelligence in that regard, being able to musical people. I think it kind of overlaps with different types of intelligence. Like I said as well, the hiker cat could also be a globalist or activist because he's always in the nature, has that connection to it. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. So the other one is called interpersonal intelligence. People who are good with other people.
No, that's being self-smart as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So being self-aware, I think that's really important in order to develop as a person, because there's a lot of people who are classed intelligence, who's got master's degrees, MBAs, right? But they can't actually be self-aware. They might have a huge ego, think that they're amazing because they've got this type of intelligence, but they might lack in self-awareness.
Yeah, I think Howard Gardner speaks to that category as well. It's called interpersonal intelligence. So interpersonal intelligence is about knowing yourself, understanding yourself. These people end up becoming philosophers and psychologists and deep thinkers, great thinkers. And, that's the seventh type of intelligence, according to Howard Gardner, is interpersonal intelligence. And, that correlates very close to interpersonal intelligence, people who are very good with other people rather than, your own self. So under that regard, you're looking at people like teachers, people, leaders, counselors, people, who read the room. And these people are actually not just self-aware, they're also aware of their surrounding. So becoming that sort of aware, building an awareness about yourself and your surrounding, that becomes the other type of intelligence, according to Howard Gardner.
So interpersonal intelligence is someone who can speak to other people and understand the situation and read the room. Got it. So intrapersonal is someone who can go inwards and understand themselves. And I think that's really important to be able to be intrapersonal if you want to grow, because there's so many people out there who want the world to change, right? Who want you to change. For example, they'd want you to change your ways, you to change the way you think, all of these things. These type of people who lack intrapersonal intelligence will always blame the other person, right? So having intrapersonal intelligence will mean that you are more self-aware, you are able to fix the trauma that you have and develop into a better human being, right?
Yeah. So I think Howard Gardner's theory of different types of intelligence, that I think is a better framework to, especially towards the educational system, that's a better framework. For example, say you have a class full of children, 30 children. These 30 children have like different strengths. Some are good at music, some are good at sports, some are good at education, some are good at languages. And what we're trying to do, what we have been doing as a society, not just in the UK, but around the world, we generalize the education system to fit into one category, like you said as well. So that category is predominantly predicated on IQ spectrum, where IQ is measured in terms of how people identify patterns. The more complex the patterns they can understand, and the higher the intelligence they have. And that's also not just not just analyzing and identifying the pattern, it's also the speed of doing that. So that's how IQ is calculated. But when you predicate the entire education system based on the spectrum of IQ and, being able to identify these patterns and being able to, your speed in getting there, it's just undermine these people who have other talents. So it's the Howard Gardner's theory on multiple types of intelligence actually better suited for the society as a whole. So because we're not just catering to just one type of specific individuals, unfortunately.
But education really came from the Industrial Revolution, and that's why education is kind of structured this way. It's to help people cope with the demands of work life, actually. So it's, initially education was because people built factories, they needed people to work in these factories. And when people needed to work in these factories, they needed to read. Now, the reason why they needed to read is because they needed to read the manuscript, they needed to read the instructions of how these equipments work. So essentially, it was made, reading alone and writing was made for work, right? So what I do believe, though, is that we should really, like, parents should really understand that there are multiple intelligence out there, and they should be the ones catering to their own children, and understanding their own children, and understanding, they do have multiple intelligence. It's just not just one. And that's all of us. We all have multiple intelligence. If I had this growing up, if I knew this growing up, I feel like I would have been way more confident in life. I think I would have had a little bit more hope in life. Like, I felt like...
You turned out to be okay.
Yeah, I did. But it took a lot of self...
Look at you.
It took a lot of intrapersonal growth, I would say, because, growing up, I have a twin brother, as you know, and he was naturally so much smarter than me, like just so intelligent in linguistics and mathematics. And I was more of a visual learner. Also, I loved art and I loved sports. All I did was art and sports, literally growing up. So comparing each other, my parents didn't compare us, luckily, but I naturally compared myself to my brother. He would always be in the top set, and I would just work my ass off to just get good grades, but I would have to work really hard. So having that comparison and not really vocalizing it and not really speaking about it, I had this internal dialogue saying that I wasn't good enough, But if I would have known about Howard Gardner's theory when I was younger, I would have known I was intelligent. And that's such an important, that's so important growing up for your mental health, knowing that, it doesn't just stop. You have multiple intelligence. Just because you don't have linguistic intelligence doesn't mean that you can't have other types of intelligence. And I think that's important for children to be aware of.
I think this is also why we need to challenge the modern way of modern educational system. And that system, output of that system, if you really look at it in generational wise, if you look at year on year, the output of that educational system tend to be just focused on one category and one set of people. They're trying to skim out the best people who are good for these big corporations, and who are filtering out are considered as not smart, and they go down at different parts in life where they don't get opportunities and they get left behind. And I think it's not just, it's also a hidden agenda behind it as well. It's good for the system, it's good for universities, it's good for the government to create these individuals who go into high corporate or jobs that are in high demand in the society, rather than, if you have a talent that's just catering to a low demand industry, then your likelihood of earning is significantly low. So I think this is a deliberate way of filtering out the people that these big corporations want, rather than actually caring about the society itself. It's never been the case where we as a society, or we as any nation in the world, reflect onto that, say, well, look, we are doing a disservice to these a lot of different types of people with different types of intelligence, a disservice by just focusing on one category. I think we need to challenge that. We're in a good space. AI is coming up, and that's going to replace a lot of jobs, and humans will have a lot of time on their hands to explore new things. I think this is a good way to go down as well, to find out exactly what works for humans from going forward.
So yeah, I think it's very empowering to know that human beings have multiple intelligence rather than just one type of intelligence.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's a better spectrum in terms of the way we map out the society than to just stick to an IQ spectrum where not everyone's going to get this analytical patterns with speed.
And that's okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay, because that's not your gift.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So we'll find out what your gift is, and we'll make sure we'll polish that in order for you to have a better future.
And
that
also
should be the attitude,
what
right?
Howard Gardner's theory is suggesting is that people have multiple intelligence. So people have multiple strengths and multiple weaknesses as well. So, and it's okay, because we're all unique. We're all complex beings. I mean, human beings are very complex beings. So just knowing that for sure is kind of promising, that, whatever you do in life, just find out, be true to yourself and find out what you're good at. And
yeah. You might be good at many things, right? So this is a conundrum for people who have like a wide range of interests as well. So you end up developing different types of skills, and then later in life that you are conflicted with where exactly you want to go with life, right? And those kind of people can become an entrepreneur, or can become somebody in the society where you have to consistently manage different things, because you have strengths in different areas. So you might as well be a leader or an entrepreneur who could, lead a team and organization into something. So there's a place for everybody, right, in the society. I think it's important for the government and the society as a whole to understand this and to go beyond the spectrums that we've been working with, the frameworks that we've been working with, to find what works for the majority. Because currently it's been working for about 20%, maybe 10% of the global populace. But beyond that, we haven't worked towards that. We haven't contributed to these people who have been, left behind for decades and decades on. Not because they don't have the right knowledge or skill. It's just because the system doesn't recognize their talents.
Exactly. And for those of you who are listening right now, just know that you're not dumb. You just haven't found your smart. You just haven't found it. So just keep at it, persist, and you'll find it.
Definitely. So whenever you feel like you're not good enough, or you feel like, well, I'm trying, it's not happening for me. When you self-doubt yourself, just understand yourself that everybody has a gift in them. Everybody. No one can say that I have zero gift. There's nobody in the world has zero. Anything can be developed. So when you're in self-doubt, when you feel like you're not good enough, when you feel like everyone else is winning in life, it's so important to reassure yourself that, well, I haven't found the right path for me yet, or I haven't found whatever it is that I'm good at yet. So you work on the key. Yet is the key. So you go on an adventure, do things that out of your comfort zone to find that out. So in order to find the things that, if you, for example, if you happen to be good at music, you have to pick up an instrument to find that out. But if you're constantly surrounded yourself with things that aren't music, then you will never figure it out. So you have to always push yourself out of the comfort zone in order to figure out exactly what works for you and what doesn't. And these things combined will help you find and help you get to wherever it is that you want to go in life. So it's so important. I think the spectrum itself, I understand that it is labeled as a theory itself. It could well be a theory, but I think even the idea of it having and labeling as multiple different types of intelligence is more reassuring and more inclusive.
Well, it makes sense. It really does, that whole theory of that person's not book smart but street smart, that literally it's the perfect example of different types of intelligence. And yeah, so that was really great that we spoke about that. We've got another segment coming up. It's men versus women. It's a rapid fire of questions, and we just give our honest answers. And again, to the audience, if you feel that your answer differs, please comment below. So here we go. The first one. Who should say I love you first? Man or woman?
I don't think it matters. I mean, whoever loves will say I love you, right? It doesn't have to be a gender role. Both is an option.
Yeah. It's a bit of a harder one because personally me, if I feel like I was in love with someone first, I probably would say it.
But it's more culturally appropriate for the man to be
I feel like a man should lead with that, because then I feel more secure. You know, I feel like I can put my walls down completely. If a man shows their adoration or their love first, then I feel like I can do that. Until that, I feel like maybe personally for me, I would have my walls up a little bit.
It makes a lot of sense. So a lot of girls, and I think they want men to make the first move in that sense, and it makes a lot of sense. But I think in general terms, we're looking at couples that have been together for a significant period of time. In that case, I don't think that it matters who says first, because you're in love, right? Unless you're not in love, and then there's another problem that we need to work on. So yeah, I think it doesn't really matter who says first, but in the beginning, it makes a lot more sense for the man to say I love you first. I suppose.
Okay.
If a man says that, but romantic men do. I think men who are more, their love language is more affirmation and
words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. In that case, he would say that. And some men are more
that's
quiet.
You. Words of affirmation. I love that about you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, number 2.
So are you actually? You're very
I love words of affirmation,
and you return it as well, which
do
is
you
great.
Think?
You do. Not as much as I do, but you do. But now you learn to become more.
I think I've learned to be like that.
It's very contagious, right?
Okay, number 2. Should bills be split 50-50 in a relationship?
It's a good question. I think from my principle, I want to pay for it. So that's my preference. I'm a type of guy, I just want to pay for that full bill. I'm not the type to split it. But I can also understand the argument of people who want to split it 50-50, because especially in the West, the society has become more equal, and, women earn as much as men and sometimes more than men. And in that case, I understand the argument there. But it generally boils down to what kind of man you are, or what kind of person you are in general. If you're a man or a woman, what kind of values that you have. You're more conservative. I'm more conservative. I'm not, and there are people who are more liberal.
I would say I would be happy to split the bill 50-50, because at the end of the day, you're enjoying each other. We live in a society where we both work, right? So I think it's fair to say that we should contribute the same amount to the relationship, because we're both enjoying the relationship. We are both going through the relationship together, and we're both earning. So why shouldn't we both split? Saying that, for example, if you're earning more than me, then I would expect you to pay a little bit more, you know, but and also it changes through your relationship. So if you're in your first stages of your relationship, I think it should be 50-50, because you don't actually know if it's going to last, right? Whereas if it's a marriage 5 years into your relationship, and you're going to be with each other for the rest of your life, then I feel like the man should pay. I don't know, but I've been treated really well with you as well. So
I think again, like I said as well, it just depends on what kind of personality that you have. So some men are conservative, some men are liberal. Liberal men want to 50-50, split that between 50-50 between the man and woman, whereas conservative men predominantly want to just stick to paying the entire bill. So it boils down to what it is, whatever that is, and also it factor in the fact that the society has become more equal, and in many cases in the recent history it's become more towards women than men. So there are a lot of cultural issues there as well.
So when I first met you, obviously in my past experience being in a relationship, I was always 50-50. But then when you came along and said, no, you save your money and I'll pay for you, I found that really strange in the beginning, but I absolutely love it now.
No, I think it's also because the Western society, the UK society, more liberal. It's become more custom for men to pay 50 and women to pay 50.
But I felt like because you were taking on that role and you were this masculine energy, it allowed me to become my feminine energy, and I feel like I never got that experience throughout any other relationship where I was able to be softer and be more feminine, and I was able to explore that more through our relationship. So yeah,
I think
so
it's the cultural dynamic as well, what people don't really understand. And a lot of people, when they go to a different country, they get accustomed to that culture. So UK culture is very liberal culture, right? The national culture. So if you look at America, it's also very liberal. And actually, America is more conservative, primarily, right? So, so when you look at these different cultures, and it influences your personal culture, your value structure, right? So if you look at other different countries, they have different cultures, right? So I think I'm a type of person that I don't really get influenced by my external environment. I'm rather preserving that my internal culture, which is, if I'm conservative, I had more conservative values, therefore I grew up with that. So that although I sort of grew up in the UK, I never had that problem where I was getting influenced by the national culture. So I retained those conservative values growing up.
Okay, so this next one, should you be friends with your ex?
That is incredible. I don't
Touchy
think
subject.
Yeah, no, I don't see any point, right? So what's the point?
You're very good at just cutting people out of your life. I've noticed you're quite good at, you go to the next chapter. But whereas in me, I feel like having relationships with people are really important. So I find it very hard to stop it. I just feel like it's such a waste of that connection. But understanding your perspective, I do understand, X is a different story because you need to put boundaries in place. And if the boundaries aren't reciprocated with your ex, then it needs to be completely cut off.
Yeah, I think, and also it's more psychological as well. I think growing up, I didn't really have that kind of issue. But now that I'm older, more aware of things such as psychology, for example, I do think that is a bad idea for anyone to stay in touch with their exes. You can argue me on this, but from my perspective, there was a time that you have crossed that friendship boundary into a relationship, right? That's more subconscious now. So there's, you've dated, you have been more intimate, and that neural pathway that you created, that, these emotions that you had when you're with that individual, it's already there. So you already have surpassed that. You've crossed that boundary. So having your ex in your life, or if you get to see them very often, that's a very bad idea, because it's very difficult for human beings to reset and go back to a previous state of affairs compared to your current, for example. So when you look at it that way, if you have crossed the boundary, gone into more intimate, we are very unlikely to revert back to a previous state.
Or it's easy to fall back into those patterns,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, because you never really go back.
You've already crossed it, so it's easier to fall back.
It's not fall back, because you already fallen back into it. So you've never gone back, if that makes sense, subconsciously.
No, but if you're, for example, if you're friends with your ex, obviously you're in another relationship, you go backwards, right? You're not kissing your ex, you're not holding hands with your ex, so you go backwards in terms of intimacy. What I'm trying to say is it's easy to fall back into it quicker than being with another person.
Yeah.
Because you have
I
that
think
connection.
we're saying the same thing, but in a different way. But what I mean is, yes, you take a step back out of it, but because you have crossed it previously, you have gone beyond that point. You're subconsciously easy to fall back into it from your perspective. But
Yes.
what I mean is, like, there's nothing to fall back into it. You're already fallen back into it. You are already in that state, even though you're not physically intimate, but subconsciously it's still there. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Subconsciously, you still have that there.
Okay.
So unconsciously, people do fall back into it because of that reason. So
It
I
is
think
interesting. I mean,
yeah.
it's a really big topic because I know a lot of people who do stay friends with their exes, and they find that completely okay. And I find more women tend to stay friends with their exes, and men are able to cut it off more. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? I mean, just let us know, really. Okay, the last one. Who handles breakups better, men or women?
Interesting. I think men, however, men form this deep connection if they are in love. It's easier for us in the short term, but harder for us in the long term.
That's what I've heard as well.
Yeah.
So women find it easier to harder in the beginning stages of breaking up, and then finds it easier afterwards. So I think the processing time, or we both have different processing stages, where women probably grieve more. I'm just speculating. I'm talking about me. I grieve more, and then I get over it. Whereas then I think men don't grieve it, and then only until a few months later it actually sinks in and you properly grieve it.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's probably, again, it's very different.
I know, it's so subjective.
Yeah, it's subjective to who you are, and how you deal with stressful situations, how you deal with intimacy, how you deal with love, how you deal with relationships,
how you perceive love as well.
Yeah, it's your form of the way you are. There's a developmental psychologist named Jean Piaget. Piaget studied developmental psychology. That means the development of the psyche as a human being. And he found out that children between, I think, 3 years to 6 years is when they develop how to form deep connections. So if your child is not associating and interacting with other children of their age between 3 years to 6 years, they will never learn to form deep connection, because that's when the psyche around, your psyche develops around interpersonal relationship. So if you never really push your child to be interactive and play with other children to learn how the society works and how to form these deep connections, they will never learn that, apparently, according to the Piagetian perspective. So it's important to note that not everyone understand. For example, for me, during that period, I was moving a lot. I had like different schools. My family was moving from one place to the other, and I had like by the time I was 6 or 7, I've been into 3 schools and leaving 3 set of friends. And for me, it's just, I don't have that element of having, structured when it comes to having
that
a lot
emotional
of people
kind of
deep connections with
connection.
People,
you can easily you probably cope better with cutting people off your life because of your experience of leaving different schools.
Yeah.
Whereas in me, I've been in my school for a very long time. So it could be, I mean, it depends on the people. Yeah. So it can't be just man or women. It could be
it could be you. I think it's really difficult to label that into a gender category.
That's
where
right.
It could just be the fact that it's a human category.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Wow, that was really good.
Yeah, fantastic. It's a great chat. I know that it's a bit rushy this one, but thank you for joining, and we look forward to filming another episode very soon. And if you guys have any questions, or let us know what you guys think, because we want to interact with you guys a lot more to get your perspective and get your questions and topics being, we want to discuss those as well. So if you have any questions and
or any topics that
any
you
topics
really
that
like,
that you really like us to
that
talk
you
about,
think it would be interesting to hear our perspective, yeah, please do.
comment below. Thank you very much.
See
I'll
you.
see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye bye.